I was never. I was just more shocked because I was all like, man, no way they could trade me.
The domino that set this whole thing in motion? Jimmy Butler's season-ending knee injury. That tragic ACL tear actually created the salary math Dallas desperately needed to make the money work. Now, Butler is heading to the Mavs as the main chip in this blockbuster. The million-dollar question now is whether AD can stay on the floor long enough to keep Steph Curry's championship window open. We are breaking down every angle of this. Let's dive right into the trade that just flipped the NBA upside down. Here are the brass tacks. The Dallas Mavericks are shipping Anthony Davis out west to Golden State. The return package revolves around Jimmy Butler. But it's not a straight swap. The Chicago Bulls are stepping in to help grease the wheels in a multi-team framework. This move officially kills a Dallas experiment that never really got off the ground. Remember, the Mavs only picked up Davis from the Lakers back on February 5th, 2025, sending Luka Doncic the other way. On paper, a big three featuring AD, Kyrie Irving, and rookie phenom Cooper Flagg looked like a title contender. In reality, the team was stuck in mediocrity, barely treading water around 500 while battling nonstop injuries and serious chemistry issues. Davis didn't come cheap. He's on the books for $54.1 million this season alone, part of a massive 5-year, $189.9 million deal that runs through 2028. Navigating that kind of cap hit under the new CBA made finding a trade partner a nightmare.
Anthony Davis to the Warriors? Well, it may not be the Warriors wanting to make that happen, but instead the Dallas Mavericks. However, Golden State may be reluctant to give up a certain somewhat.
Golden State wasn't exactly throwing assets at the table initially. Sure, they needed a paint beast to pair with Steph, but insiders suggest it was the Dallas front office that picked up the phone and pitched the idea first. Early on, the Warriors balked at the asking price. They had zero interest in breaking up their veteran core, specifically Jimmy Butler or Draymond Green. The word was, any talk of acquiring AD would have forced them to sacrifice Draymond, a price they weren't willing to pay.
You're talking about an Anthony Davis trade, but it would require the inclusion of Draymond Green, and it should be noted that it was the Mavs who called Golden State about trading Draymond Green or trading it for Anthony Davis and not the other way around.
Butler was the financial match, carrying an identical $54.1 million price tag. The Warriors had picked him up from Miami in a 2025 trade. But then came the injury that completely flipped the script. On January 19th, 2026, disaster struck. While playing against his old squad, the Heat, Butler went down with a torn right ACL. Just like that, Golden State announced his season was over.
Mark, I have to ask you, when Jimmy Butler tore his ACL the other night, AD and Jimmy Butler make like the same amount of money, and so a lot of Mavs fans' antenna went up and started thinking, well, the Warriors, they have a pretty old team. They want to make one more run at it for Steph. You would presume could maybe some desperation set in and the Mavs score a pick or two in the future along with Butler for AD.
Davis is currently shelf-bound himself. He suffered ligament damage in his left hand back on January 8th, 2026. And the doctors don't expect him back on the court for at least 6 weeks. That hand injury really cooled the market initially. General managers are terrified of his medical file. Charles Barkley actually called it during the Christmas broadcast, noting that the writing was already on the wall.
He said, what are the Mavs going to do? They in trouble now. Because it's clear to me that Anthony Davis, as much as we like him and love him as a player, he's never going to be healthy. I think I might move on. If I was running the team, I'd say, you know what? It's Cooper's team now.
Cooper Flagg has been tearing it up as a rookie, putting up monster numbers while the rest of the roster tries to find its identity. It was becoming obvious that something had to give. Behind the scenes, Rich Paul from Clutch Sports was reportedly agitating for a move. The goal? Get Davis in a spot to sign a massive 4-year, $275 million extension in August 2026. Dallas wasn't willing to put that kind of cash on the table given Davis's age and injury history.
Makes me wonder if that's not something that's also being engineered by Clutch potentially.
No, that's a good point. That's a good point because they do like to, move chess pieces behind the scenes and whatnot and try to get their guys in the most advantageous situation.
Look, I don't think the phones will continue to ring. Calls will still continue to be taken and made. But the reality is when Anthony Davis is sidelined indefinitely, it's going to be much harder to trade him. I would say right now, there doesn't appear to be anything percolating, but I'm not going to say it's over when we still got 2 weeks and change to go.
The Bulls became the perfect middleman to make the money work between Dallas and Golden State. Plus, the narrative fit Davis as a hometown kid. He grew up right there in the city, played at Perspectives Charter. From a basketball standpoint, Chicago desperately needed frontcourt help to pair with their young core of Josh Giddey and Matas Buzelis. The framework coming together had Chicago sending protected first-round picks to Dallas to sweeten the pot while absorbing salary. This structure was the key to Golden State landing Davis without having to gut their roster. Stein cautioned that while the logic was sound, the Bulls' front office, led by Arturas Karnisovas, rarely takes big swings. There wasn't concrete proof they were ready to pull the trigger on something this complex. But as the trade deadline loomed, the stars aligned. Butler's injury forced the issue, the financials lined up, and the Warriors decided it was now or never. Let's circle back to the catalyst. Jimmy Butler's devastating knee injury on January 19th, 2026. That was the moment the entire landscape shifted. It happened in the third quarter of a blowout win against the Heat. Jimmy went up to catch a pass, landed awkwardly, and that was it. Non-contact. The type of injury that makes the whole arena go silent. Golden State confirmed our worst fears the next morning. Butler was done for the 2025-26 season, with surgery scheduled for a later date. He's 36 years old. With a rehab timeline that likely eats into next season, you have to wonder if we're looking at the beginning of the end. It's a massive crossroads for his career. That right knee has been through the wars. He tore his meniscus in 2018, sprained his MCL in 2024, and now this. The cumulative damage is real, and there's only so much modern medicine can do to reverse that kind of wear and tear. Warriors GM Mike Dunleavy Jr. faced the media on January 20th. It was a somber presser. He said all the right things, supporting Jimmy, hoping for a full recovery, but you could feel the tension. There's a cruel irony to the timing of all this. Since coming over from Miami, Butler had been a legitimate game changer. The Warriors were looking like a juggernaut, posting a 46-22 record when he was in the lineup.
And Jimmy Butler has been a fantastic Warrior since they got him. I think with Jimmy in uniform, I want to say their record last time I checked was 46-22 when Jimmy's in uniform. So he's been really good there. I don't see them now just coldly sending him away because he sustained this awful injury and he can't play.
He was delivering exactly what they paid for. Elite two-way force who could lock down the opponent's best player and go get a bucket when Steph was covered. The physical recovery is one thing, but the mental hurdle is a whole other beast. Studies show that nearly 40% of athletes struggle with the fear of re-injury, hesitating on plays they used to make instinctively. For a guy like Butler, whose entire game is built on supreme confidence and physical dominance, the isolation of a year-long rehab is going to be his toughest opponent yet. The analytics paint a pretty clear picture. For an isolated ACL tear, return-to-play rates in the league sit between 85 and 90%. But getting back to peak efficiency, that drops to around 65 or 70%. And if you're on the wrong side of 30, those odds get a lot uglier. Looking at history, it's a mixed bag. Derrick Rose saw his prime vanish after multiple knee blowouts. On the flip side, Klay Thompson made it back from both ACL and Achilles tears, but he had to completely reinvent his game to stay effective. Jimmy Butler is 36 years old. The brutal math says a recovery at his age drastically spikes the chance of him retiring within 3 to 5 years. Despite Butler going down, the Warriors held the line publicly and privately. Mike Dunleavy made it clear they weren't looking to dump his contract, hoping his return would spark the team just like it did the previous season. The front office looked Jimmy in the eye and promised him a spot for next season. But in this league, promises collide with roadblocks, and there were plenty of complications piling up.
There's various factors that would be in the way of that kind of scenario. I mean, yes, Jimmy Butler's money, that would be an easy match for Anthony Davis, but the Mavericks would want draft compensation attached.
Here's the kicker, though. Butler's $54.1 million cap hit was actually an asset. In the complex world of NBA cap rules, that big number was the golden ticket needed to make a blockbuster trade work. Public PR aside, you can't ignore the personal dynamic between Dunleavy and Butler. They aren't just GM and player, they're former teammates. That shared locker room history makes this way more complicated than a standard transaction. Shipping off a guy right after he blows out his knee, that's heavy. It carries an emotional toll that you just can't quantify on a spreadsheet.
And the other thing you got to remember here, there is a human factor. Mike Dunleavy, the Warriors GM, is a former teammate of Jimmy Butler.
Do they wait on Butler's rehab and burn precious time off Steph Curry's championship window? Or do they cash in that contract now while it still holds value in a trade? Jimmy proved his worth on the court. The Warriors went 50-29 with him in the lineup, including that red-hot 25-19 start to the 2025-2026 campaign. The man was a force when healthy. Problem is, when healthy was becoming a phrase we heard way too often.
The Warriors have no choice but to make some sort of aggressive trade at this deadline. It's kind of difficult to figure out. Jimmy Butler is out for the year, and so what that has done is it's made it complicated with Moses Moody's salary.
This wasn't just about Jimmy. The injury sent shockwaves through the entire trade market leading up to the deadline. Enter Anthony Davis, the superstar conundrum. To get why the Warriors zeroed in on Anthony Davis, you have to understand the man himself, the generational talent wrapped in a fragile frame. Born March 11th, 1993, in Chicago, Illinois, growing up in the Englewood neighborhood, Davis went to Perspectives Charter School, not exactly a basketball powerhouse known for churning out NBA pros. They didn't even have a real gym. Resources were non-existent, but none of that mattered once the growth spurt hit. His physical evolution was straight out of a comic book. He shot up from a 6-foot guard as a freshman to a 6'10" skyscraper by his senior year. In 3 years, he morphed from a perimeter player into a hybrid monster, and the scouts went crazy. The awards piled up. McDonald's All-American, Jordan Brand Classic Co-MVP, Parade All-American, and Mr. Basketball of Illinois. By 2011, Scout.com had him pegged as the undisputed #1 recruit in the nation. On August 13th, 2010, he pledged allegiance to Coach Calipari in Kentucky. That one season in Lexington became his launchpad. Davis powered the Wildcats to a 38-2 record and a national title, taking down Kansas 67-59. He started all 40 games as a freshman and racked up a lifetime's worth of hardware in one winter. We're talking consensus National Player of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, Freshman of the Year, SEC Player of the Year. The list goes on. He shattered block records for both the SEC and NCAA freshmen. It was a no-brainer for the New Orleans Hornets to take him first overall in the 2012 NBA draft. He came into the league with the weight of a franchise on his shoulders and didn't disappoint. Davis made first-team All-Rookie and led the entire NBA in blocks right out of the gate. During his 7-year run in New Orleans from 2012 to 2019, he evolved into a two-way juggernaut. He made his first All-Star team in 2014 and led the league in blocks 3 separate times. In 2017, he put on a show at the All-Star game, dropping a record-breaking 52 points to snag the MVP trophy. He dragged the Pelicans to the postseason in 2015 and again in 2018, even winning a series. But the constant injuries and mediocrity wore him down, leading to that infamous trade request in January 2019. That June, the trade to the Lakers shifted the tectonic plates of the NBA. Teaming up with LeBron James was his ticket to destiny. They sealed the deal in the 2020 bubble, beating Miami 4-2. That ring completed the holy trinity of basketball: NCAA title, Olympic gold, and World Cup gold.
Did those things sort of give you the experience and the mental fortitude to be able to handle something like this?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you obviously playing in LA is, and then alongside LeBron, you can't really get any bigger than that, right? And then just playing in the Olympics. I think the Olympics this year, when I was playing with all those wonderful guys, Hall of Famers, on the biggest stage, the entire world is watching. I think those moments, playing in the finals, those moments help me prepare for something like this.
By 2025, Davis had racked up 10 All-Star nods, 5 All-NBA selections, and 5 All-Defensive Team spots. The Lakers paid him handsomely for it, too. He snagged another gold medal in 2024 and won the first ever NBA Cup in 2023. But the injury bug just wouldn't leave him alone. Calves, knees, adductors, you name it. He missed huge chunks of time, cementing the reputation that his body just couldn't keep up with his skill set.
Is AD's poor play in the second half concerning?
Atrocious.
Oh.
Very concerning. Ladies and gentlemen, you just saw the reason why the Los Angeles Lakers ain't going to win no championship this year. You talk all of this mess in the offseason. I'm so ticked off at Anthony Davis right now. It's an embarrassment what happened with him yesterday. And we got to call it like we see it. When this brother brings his A game, he's one of the top 7 players on the planet Earth. Charles Barkley calls him street clothes. I said no. I call him Six Flags. He's a roller coaster. He's up and down. You never know what you're going to get. He'll drop 41 game. He'll drop 11 the next.
It was supposed to be a new era for Dallas's front court, but the debut had to wait. A detached retina forced him into surgery and protective goggles, but he eventually got back on the floor.
At the end of the day, it's a business, and I understand that. I was never, I was just more shocked because, I was all like, man, no way they could trade me. When you're one of those players, and I'm pretty sure, like, on the other side for Luka as well, like, both of us probably never thought that we'll be the ones getting traded unless we asked. Every day that goes that's past, I just forget about it more.
Now 32 years old and grinding through his 14th NBA season, Davis is packing his bags yet again. That hand ligament tear on January 8th, 2026, definitely took a temporary chunk out of his market value. But for a front office scrambling to keep Steph Curry's title window open, it was a gamble they had to take. This is the Warriors' last-ditch effort to salvage a legend's legacy. Going from the league's punchline to its premier dynasty, the Golden State Warriors orchestrated one of the most incredible turnarounds in pro sports history. To really get why they're so desperate now, you have to look at what's at stake. Joe Lacob and Peter Guber bought a struggling, mediocre franchise back in 2010 for $450 million. Lacob, a venture capitalist with roots in biotech and a serious love for hoops, doubled down on the draft. He pushed a fast-paced, three-point heavy system that completely changed how the game is played. They built their empire on homegrown talent. Stephen Curry landed at 7th overall in 2009, followed by Klay Thompson at 11 in 2011, and Draymond Green at 35 in 2012. Curry and Thompson earned the Splash Brothers moniker for their shooting dominance, while Green locked down the defense and handled the playmaking duties to round out the core. Everything clicked when they brought in Steve Kerr in 2014. The former sharpshooter turned coach installed a motion offense that prioritized spacing and passing. They snapped a 40-year drought by beating Cleveland for the title in 2015. And then, Kevin Durant walked through the door. Durant joined right after that historic 73-9 run in 2015-16, the one that ended in a gut-wrenching finals collapse to the Cavs after blowing a 3-1 lead. Signing him created a super team unlike anything we'd ever seen. With Curry, Thompson, Durant, and Green running the show, the Warriors cruised to back-to-back rings in 2017 and 2018, taking down Cleveland both times. Between 2015 and 2022, they made 6 finals appearances and hung 4 banners. By 2019, they'd cemented their dynasty and moved into the high-tech Chase Center in San Francisco. The tide turned in 2019 when Durant ruptured his Achilles and left for Brooklyn. To make matters worse, Klay Thompson lost years of his prime to a torn ACL and then an Achilles injury. They bottomed out with the league's worst record in 2019-20, but the old guard wasn't done yet. They proved the doubters wrong by beating Boston for a 4th championship in 2022. Life after the dynasty has been rough. Bob Myers, the GM who architected the whole thing, walked away in 2023 due to burnout. Mike Dunleavy Jr. stepped in, trying to balance veteran savvy with young talent. Jonathan Kuminga, the 7th pick in 2021, and Brandon Podziemski, taken 19th in 2023, are supposed to be the future. Meanwhile, Green locked in an extension back in 2023. They swung for the fences in February 2025, trading Andrew Wiggins, Chris Paul, and assets to Miami for Jimmy Butler. Butler's grit combined with Curry's range looked like a winning ticket until Butler tore his ACL. By late January 2026, the team was sitting at 27-22, wondering if the window had slammed shut.
That's why I keep coming back to Anthony Davis. He's the only guy that isn't going to cost you too many draft picks or force you to sacrifice your playoff ceiling on defense by including Draymond. So looking at the Anthony Davis deal, it capitalizes on the urgency of the Steph situation without being so expensive that it's detrimental to their long-term future.
What I would say, though, is ultimately, to me, you have all these conversations with Stephen Curry. He's the guy whose timeline matters most. If Stephen Curry goes to the front office and says, guys, I want to, let's do anything we can. Let's make the best trade we can make. I want to go as far as we can this season.
Lacob stays hands-on, constantly strategizing with Kerr and Curry. The dynamic shifted heavily after Klay Thompson left in 2024, changing the team's DNA.
Joe owes it to Steph to go for it while he's here So I think that they're still going to trade Kuminga. That's what I'm hoping.
The kid demanded out the second he was eligible. Between that, his inconsistent minutes, and the coaching staff benching him, his stock tanked at the worst possible moment.
Look, I think the realistic situation is they're going to have to play him. Like, he's going to have, and, you know, they've tried to get the Mavericks interested in him. I would play him against the Mavs. You know, he's got to start playing.
Dunleavy knows it's a tightrope walk. He has to get decent value for Kuminga while trying to win a title, and that Jimmy Butler injury just made moving Kuminga 10 times harder. The Warriors are handcuffed by their payroll. Unless they move Butler or Green, bringing in another max-level star is basically mathematically impossible. The same team that changed the game with small ball is now slamming into the hard reality of the modern salary cap.
I think it's interesting that if they're not interested in trading either one of those guys, math-wise, that all but takes them out of the mix for any of the higher salaried players, which would include Anthony Davis.
But Davis is the skeleton key here. His defense can plug the hole Butler left behind. Offensively, he pairs perfectly with Curry. And crucially, his contract matches Butler's. The hard part? Trading an injured player goes against the loyalty culture they've built, but with Curry's clock ticking, they have to be ruthless. The dynasty needs one last piece. And looking beyond the game, these two superstars are on very different paths. This deal swaps two of the league's most unique personalities. Both Davis and Butler have built brands that are bigger than just basketball. Davis has been smart about his portfolio. In October 2024, he launched Jack M3 Productions, a full-service production house where he sits as CEO. They're financing and developing everything from TV to film. He's also hired some heavy hitters, bringing in Eric Burks as COO and Keith Chamberlain to run development. His endorsement game is strong, too, pulling in somewhere between $10 and $15 million a year off the court. After he got dealt to the Mavericks, Davis left Nike to sign a massive 5-year signature shoe deal with Puma. He's also got long-term deals with Ruffles. He's been with them since 2020 and even has his own flavors, plus Red Bull, ExxonMobil, and Beats Electronics.
Big kid. I try to stay young. You know, I'm getting up there. I try to stay young. And, you know, like for me, the game stresses you enough, right? Like the game of basketball is stressful when you're on the floor because you're so competitive and you want to win. So when I'm not playing basketball, I want to have fun.
The organization focuses on lifting up at-risk kids, giving them a shot at a better future by rewarding good grades, getting them active, and helping them grow as individuals. His charity resume is heavy, featuring major contributions to the United Negro College Fund and relief efforts during crises, but he also has a goofy side that makes him a favorite in the locker room. That personality actually landed him on TV.
So I was on a show. I still do, watching Practical Jokers all the time. And I got invited to do an episode with the Practical Jokers, and I couldn't turn it down. So I went and did the episode and hit a ball. It was maybe one of the best times of my life.
Really?
And after me and the guys were talking, and they were like, we should do something together. Like, let's collab on something.
Jimmy Butler, on the other hand, channeled his energy into business. His flagship venture is Big Face Coffee, a brand born out of necessity inside the N. Bachelor of Arts bubble in 2020. He couldn't stand the generic coffee they were serving, so he started brewing high-end beans in his hotel room and charging players $20 a cup. That hustle went viral, giving Butler the leverage to turn Big Face into a legitimate lifestyle company. He locked down the trademarks in 2021 and rolled out the full e-commerce site by 2023. Looking at the 2025 and 2026 season, the brand has exploded. They opened their first brick-and-mortar shop, dropped a collab with Onyx Coffee Lab, and partnered with Bacardi to bring the Rum Room Domino Club to San Francisco. In October of 2025, Butler expanded his portfolio even further, buying a minority stake in the San Diego Wave FC and joining the wave of pro athletes investing in the National Women's Soccer League. He also dropped $500,000 into the Padel Reserve Cup, a sport he swears has sharpened his footwork on the basketball court. But his creativity isn't just limited to business. He is deep into music, too. Butler has been quietly recording country music, stacking up over 60 tracks by early 2024. His plan is to record 200 songs before curating a debut album, and he has even hinted at working with heavy hitters like Morgan Wallen. Beyond entertainment, he has become a strong voice for mental health. In 2021, he joined a men's health roundtable with John Batiste to talk about vulnerability, self-care, and the pressure of performing at the highest level. Both superstars carry the weight of where they came from. Davis grew up in Chicago, attending a tiny charter school that didn't even have a proper gym. Butler's road was even rockier. He faced homelessness as a teenager, ground his way through Tyler Junior College, and finally made it to Marquette. When he was taken 30th overall in 2011, the very last pick of the first round, most people thought he had hit his ceiling. Instead, he used that doubt as fuel, transforming himself from a defensive role player into a perennial six-time All-Star. His career has taken him through the Bulls, Timberwolves, Sixers, and Heat before landing with Golden State, a journey that proved he is as valuable as he is unpredictable. Davis, meanwhile, seemed to follow a more standard script for stardom. He was the #1 overall pick, fresh off a national title at Kentucky, sweeping the Player of the Year awards. It looked like a straight shot to the Hall of Fame, but injuries have been the constant plot twist in his career. Now, their paths have crossed in a twist nobody saw coming. Butler's torn ACL opened up a salary matching window, and Davis being on the trading block turned out to be the perfect answer. Two icons who defined themselves by adapting to adversity are now the centerpieces of a blockbuster trade that shocked the league. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this breakdown, keep the momentum going by clicking one of the videos popping up on your screen right now for more top-tier basketball content.